So today,
get your favorite health tips right here on U24. Maintain your kidney by drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water each day. This can be in form of soup, tea, water, cooked grains, and boiled vegetables.
Hi, my name is Doreen Tuhidire, coming to you from Be Money Wiser, and we're going to be bringing to you the hashtag 100 Ways to Be Money Wiser by Mrs. T. Tilda Nabandra. We're going to be running this hashtag 100 Ways to Be Money Wiser on U24 television. Don't miss out.
U24. Don't miss on U24.
Entrepreneurs Hub, giving you a deep and unique insight into agribusiness, services, ICT and innovation, industrialization and so much more. Entrepreneurs Hub, growing your small, medium and large business entity. With yours truly, Sandra Kahunde.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tuntu Mosquito Repellent Jelly is Uganda's first and only UNBS approved mosquito repellent jelly, protecting you from malaria while nourishing your skin with a gentle touch. Just apply it on your body and mosquitoes will not come near you. We also have Tuntu Habu Jelly, excellent for your skin, whether you have skin rashes, pimples, irritations and other skin problems. Tuntu Habu Jelly is your body armor. Call or WhatsApp 0754 135 343 or 0780 899 580.
Youth of Purpose.
a very good evening, and of course you are welcome to U24, and this is your usual program, Youth of Purpose. My name is Jesslyn Ankunda, and I'll be hosting this conversation. Today we're going to talk about something very interesting in regards to youth participation in politics, and importantly in the most concluded NRM primaries under the National Youth Council, and also ahead of the general elections that are within a short time. We equally are going to be talking about the presidential nominations and campaigns. Yes, elections are here, and 2026, 2025, the fire is increasing. So we shall be able to also equally dissect that. And of course, joining me is a very interesting panel, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves, starting it off with my immediate left, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Tracy. My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. I'm a youth secretary at the People's Progressive Party, but I also am a feminist lawyer and a writer. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us. And Emanzi.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be here every Wednesday, sharing my insights into national and continental issues. My name is Mujisha Emanzi, and I'm very glad to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emanzi. Miracle?
Thank you so much, Tracelyn. My name is Nasazi Miracle, currently serving as the 91st Deputy Guild Speaker at Macquarie University, and it is always an honor to be here to discuss such pertinent issues. Thank you.
Interesting. So today we're going to talk about youth participation in politics, and particularly the most recent concluded, I think yesterday, the National Youth Council elections of the NRM party. How it was, how it went, but also the ongoing stories around what is happening within the presidential campaigns right from the ruling party to the opposition party candidates, and also how many were able to show up. What is the status quo for participation, especially in terms of women? I'll get it to you, Nancy. Just a brief preamble on particularly the presidential elections, campaigns, and nominations.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I think there has been a lack of oversight on past wrongs, especially in terms of exclusion, but also violence in the electoral process. During this whole time, many CSOs have been concerned that there would be violence in the next elections, and they've been holding many stakeholder engagements, but I don't know how much fruition that will bring. To start off with the presidential nominations, I think over 200 plus persons picked up nomination forms, among which were many youth and a good number of women. So what came out of the nominations is that, number one, no youth made it to the ballot. Number two, no woman made it to the ballot. And number three, no person who does not belong to a political institution like a political party made it to the ballot. It means that only people who belong to political parties made it to the ballot. The ones who didn't have the support of institutions did not. So that, of course, raised very many questions on how inclusive the process was. Moreover, a lot of people say that the Electoral Commission was not very transparent in the process of verifying signatures and how they left out a good number of participants. There were so many complaints last week. A bigger question was the question of participation of women. Because no woman made it to the ballot, one of the big questions was who is going to present the women's agenda. And it has been stressing a lot of people out, myself included. However, I think we've come down enough to realize that, we've never had a female president, and the women's agenda has always been pushed. Now, when I talk about past oversights, I'm talking about especially the inclusion of the army in elections. According to our constitution, the army is only supposed to be involved in elections when they are called upon by the police. But it seems that it has become the default setting for them to be involved. The reason why everyone is so concerned is because of the issues of violence and the ones that are meted, especially with the Kawempe by-elections, which set a precedent for what elections might look like. Also, something that clearly disturbed me was the issue of not just the army, the SFC now protecting presidential candidates. Before, it was the duty of the police, but now it appears that it has become the default setting. It should be remembered that at earlier in July, the commander of the armed forces, General Muhoozi, said that on a tweet, he said that the SFC would be protecting presidential candidates. This is not legally coded, so I wonder how this came about. But also, if you look at things like transparency, which comes with accreditation of civil societies to observe elections, the process has been confusing, and many civil society organizations have complained that they have not been accredited to vote. And yet in the previous elections, many who were accredited were also arrested in the process of observation of elections. However, the nominations went a bit more peaceful than the previous times. We have 8 nominated men to the ballot, and a concerning issue, of course, is another one, that the candidates who are not so popular do not get the same coverage as the ones who are too popular in the media. You can barely find information on them online or even in the newspaper ratings. And then, with a surge of over 5 million youth voters in this election, with very little or no civic education, we are very concerned about what the voting is going to look like, and we also do not know if there will be any penalties on voter bribery and things like that. So, but the candidates have started. The campaign trail has been fairly peaceful as opposed to last time. So for me, that is my observation of the nomination cycle. When you look at other things like the recently concluded, the youth elections that happened yesterday, it brought up a huge question that Uganda has been battling with since independence, especially the northern question and tribalism, where people seem to be allying behind candidates based on their regional preferences. That was a big concern for many of the people. Thank you so much.
Interesting. I think you bring out the preamble quite well. and it raises very many questions that you've put out in your submission, but maybe we shall be getting to that later. Emanzi, in addition to Nancy, your perspective of the presidential campaigns, elections, and nominations as we are today.
Well, it's a new day in the same old system. Because when you look at some of the activities that have been happening, much as they are disheartening, they're not surprising. For example, when we just go back to the point of nomination of the candidates, actually pre-nomination, when we are having candidates register and gathering signatures, it was not the system, or rather the procedure was not very transparent, in the sense that individuals that had met the criteria of the numbers on the last minute were turned back, and a couple of discrepancies were highlighted by the Electoral Commission officials, who sometime later came out to admit a fault on their end. And much as we upload that symbol of civility, this should not be, can I say, the modus operandi of an electoral commission that has had 4 or rather 5 years for preparation. You know, it signals a lot of inconsistencies, irregularities, and some glitches that we are yet to see in the forthcoming general elections. But like my sister mentioned, there has been a relative semblance of peace as compared to the other elections. And you know, the most surprising thing is, even as we use this statement, a semblance of peace, it's pretty much funny, because peace should be the order of the day. You know, in this day and age, electoral violence should be a thing of the past. But owing to the fact that we've had a very precarious political history as a country, I think many a time we make the mistake of comparing our infant democracy to other established democracy, but that is also not an excuse for getting away with a lot of illegalities, you know. For example, I'm not very much concerned about the nitty-gritties of who said what, who was blocked at the last minute. I want to focus more on the bigger picture. The bigger picture being, one, the issue of representation. That is very key, because we've been making a lot of noise about youth representation, women representation, and not just at the presidential level, but from the least basics of our society, the smallest stages of our society, from our local communities. So when Nancy mentioned that we don't have youth and women appearing on the ballot, and we have 8 gamen, okay, she didn't use the word gamen, that's my word. So that pretty much more is a projection of what our society is thinking. In the last Kalulu, we had a youth representative in the names of Katumba Oe, and we had a lady, were they ladies or a lady, Nancy Kalem. That looked good for our democracy, but now the question has to morph from, is it a question of having these demographic dividends and gender representatives on the ballot, or should we now discuss how does that cascade down to the lives of the local people, right? Yes. So the big shots in this Kalulu, without burying our heads in the sand, is General MUSEVENI, who is running for his, is it 7th term? 7th term? Yes. And a bad Bobby Wine, you know, the president of the National Unity Platform. I call him bad Bobby Wine because he's more youthful, you know, and that is what we used to call him back in the day. Now, having these 2 shots, big shots, the question now should be, on a stage like this, what are the agendas they are presenting to the nation. General Yoweri Museveni has codenamed his campaign Protecting the Gains, right?
Yes.
Bobi Wine and the National Unity Platform have codenamed their campaign A New Uganda. So if we double click on the manifesto of the National Resistance Movement of the last Chisanja, which we're actually currently in, can we have some statistics on the scorecard or scorecards on what have they achieved tangibly and ostensibly, but also how practical are some of the admissions or policy recommendations in their manifestos are, owing to the context of one, our economy, the peace and security as it reigns right now in Uganda. Now, those are in-house factors, but also looking at other geopolitical factors like the East African community, what is happening in Tanzania right now, what's happening in Kenya, Rwanda, the DRC, but also on the continental level before we go to the global scale. Because whether we like it or not, what happens in Washington has a trickle-down effect on what happens in Kampala in terms of leadership. So I think we're in for a bumpy ride. Bumpy ride being that we're still going to see a lot of things that have been happening before, diversion of routes, beating up of political opponents, curtailing of fundamental freedoms like speech and especially online speech for online activists. But now the reason we come to this conversation, this platform, is one, to identify what could be the potential triggers, how to neutralize them, and how to create an agenda for the young people that is unilateral for all of us to benefit. I thank you for now.
Thank you so much, Emanzi, for that. Now, to get to your miracle, the National Youth Council, which is presumably non-partisan, but also from the reality that we understand it is a structure that is purely NRM dominated. Yesterday they had their elections, primary elections, and I think tomorrow they're set to have their general elections. But also, as someone who has been following closely, from your perspective on how it is, the fact that we're talking about inclusion, but also an aspect of peace, like Emanzi brought in, how peaceful do you think they were, but also what do you take from the entire process?
Thank you so much for that question. From the elections that happened yesterday, the primaries, we know that the National Youth Council holds its election every after 5 years. It's a platform where the young people can be nurtured into mainstream politics. And yes, it proves providing a platform for the young people, but we also cannot underscore some of the problems or some of the issues that are happening, especially in the election that took place yesterday. We saw in terms of the electoral commission of the party, the same story again, late elections. And you know, such things reflect the national politics. Such things reflect confidence of the young people in the electoral processes. And I think it is very, very important that we try to streamline them, like Nancy said, like she said. Some of these things happen. They have been happening, but the electoral commission that is given time for over 5 years to really prepare, it is such a sad tale that things still go not right. From the party, from the elections, we've seen people grievances, especially over legitimacy. We've seen people who have campaigned, put in all the energy, but that is not reflected on the voting day. We've seen manipulation of voters. I mean, these are people that are really independent, that should go and meet the electorate, convince them, and the power, you know, the power bestowed upon the people for them to decide. But we've seen manipulation. What does that mean? Should the young people really be confident in this electoral process in the coming elections? Because as much as these elections happen at a very secluded, maybe for a secluded group of people, let's say the youth, they really reflect what happens in the national politics. Saying the percentage of the young people, 75%, these are people that are really going to participate in the national election. But seeing what has happened, seeing what has been happening and what happened yesterday, it is not reflective. It is not, we could say it is not right. We saw candidates who genuinely pursued these roles, pursued the electoral process, but like she said, you know, regions preferred over democracy. That is a lie. That is not right. Because at the end of the day, we want to be confident enough that yes, we are going to be out there, we are going to talk to the people, we are going to be listened to, but is the electoral process going to reflect what we have pursued, what we have really sought for? And to me, that is something that needs to be streamlined, that's something that needs to be corrected, because at the end of the day, the young people are the future, the young people are the foundation of everything that happens in this country. So in my perspective, still the election had issues. Yes, it had issues. Yes, there was some fairness for some positions, but when we go to the key positions, when you go to the chairperson, when you go to the vice chairperson, what really happened? What really happened is not a real say of fairness. Yes, there is a question. There are questions over, yes, who presides, rather, who is in control of this election? Is it in the hands of the people, or is it in the hands of some few individuals? Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Nancy, you highlighted very many issues that I'm getting exactly which one to start with. But particularly, I want to start it off with the aspect of women, and also within the global village of commercialization of politics. Could it be one of those that has maybe made some of the women not show up, or also to fracture it in terms of the system that we are in? Is it the system, and also what needs to be done? Because if we keep saying women, we cannot give up that women can never be presidents. If you're to follow closely, you will see some of the female presidents elsewhere, starting with our very own in Tanzania. So in your perspective, what do you think the problem is, but also what exactly, or how do we handle it?
Thank you so much, Traceline. As students who did a bit of history, we are always taught a phenomenon of a society right before it falls into the most devastating times. For example, the German Holocaust and even colonization as itself. The thing is that we do not view things as, view things from a systemic and intersectional lens. For example, the question of women is so multifaceted. It cannot be one issue only. It cannot be only money. Discrimination trickles down to people's identities. And right now, we cannot deny the fact that we are divided into a class of the haves and the have-nots. And you can see even with the representation in politics, because the political scene is a direct reflection of the need of the voices of people down. So now, the National Unity Platform is trying to say that it represents the poor people, or the people who do not have access, and then the NRM is protecting the gains.
We also have the Common Man's Party.
The Common Man's Party, yes. And you see,
Peasants
Party, the revolutionary parties, like there is so much going on, and everyone is looking for a certain type of change. Even the FDC is saying they're going to put money in people's pockets. However, I feel like there is one thing missing from most of these campaigns, which is the fact that a society has to not treat the symptoms, but the issues that are happening. Because even the political parties that are saying they will try to solve the problems of the time have their internal party issues, which they have not addressed. And the most standard issue there is exclusion. How people who do not have the money, or how people who are not connected to party leaders are not getting the flags. I will not give examples, and because I do not want to digress from the conversation. So the topic of women is the fact that even today, you have to ask people, would you vote a woman if she was on the ballot? Because looking at the past presidential candidates who were women, they got less than 10% of the national. Did people think some of them were qualified? Definitely. But did they vote them? No, they did not. And some people can say, oh, I accidentally voted this person, because they do not see women as potential leaders. So right now, one of the things that actually we need to address is the fact that we do not need to do lip service on issues that actually affect our society. It means that there must be some type of accountability for everyone. If the Electoral Commission, which is the overseer of elections, cannot nominate candidates or tell them in time that you're not nominated, there are these and these signatures which do not match, we are really hopeless on very many issues. If the army, which is supposed to protect and serve this country, is being partisan, there are certain things that we will not get done, especially in terms of human rights, but also human capital development. We see that candidates who are poor are less likely to get the flag. But then, women are the most poor in the demographic. Youth are the most poor in the demographic. That means if you're a woman and you're below 30, it's almost impossible for you to get the flag, because you do not have access because of your gender, you do not have access because of ageism. But that also builds on the bigger component of classism. And then the fact that we are still divided along tribal lines, because this country has a very bad history of tribalism. And right now, with our history and the politics of revenge, because we know that the North in itself accuses the current government of doing a genocide on the people of northern Uganda before they were in power. That's largely why there was a big support for the FDC and all that. What is the solution? National unity. National unity. And it cannot be fake. It cannot be on the surface. It cannot be based on slogans. It must be on real work that reflects. It must be on removing systemic oppression. It must be on removing nepotism. It must be on holding people accountable for the crimes that they have committed. But it also has to bring a semblance of reconciliation, that there is some sort of truth in this. That's the best way to save this nation. Otherwise, all we're going to do is talk about issues. But also, we live in a society where we aim to do as little harm as possible to people, to each other. I like to say that. And if for some reason you are a man and you think a woman is not supposed to be a leader, you are part of the problem. If you are a woman and you believe that poor people are not supposed to get the flag, you are part of the problem. If you're from such and such part of the country and you think that certain people do not deserve opportunities, you are also part of the problem, and you need to beat your chest 3 times.
Interesting.
Yes, and tell yourself that you're part of the problem. We need to reform and look at people as human beings, because we all deserve the opportunities. For us to have a bit of meritocracy, we have to be honest about the part we play in driving the inequalities in society.
Wow, interesting right there. And I kept asking myself if I'm part of the problem. Okay, getting to you, Emanzi, especially in terms of presidential campaigns. Today the president was in Dokolo Amolata, and he is actually, the other day he was in LUWEERO. In terms of the relative peace that you're talking about, how easy is it, especially for his opponents or those in the opposition party? And maybe also if you have closely been following with the opposition candidates, how easy is it as of now? And what are your anticipations in 2 weeks, in a month, because it's something that is going to run way to next year? So from your understanding, but also from your perspective in terms of the campaigns and how they are going, what do you have to say?
About how easy it is for the opponents of General MUSEVENI?
relatively on both sides for those ones who have been in power and for the newcomers and also for the many political parties that have come through?
Okay. My attempt at responding to that question would dwell more on the bigger factor, which is not so much about what they are told, but what people are experiencing.
Yes.
For example, today, General MUSEVENI was in Amalata, like I mentioned, and from the pictures that were shared on his X account, there was a multitude of people that came to the rally, right? And from his speech, he mostly spoke about peace, disarmament, and creation of jobs, right? But if you look at the poverty index of Uganda, by Uganda Bureau of Statistics as of 2024, Amalata district still remains in that cocoon of one of the poorest countries, districts of the poorest region in the country, okay? So to me, the gist should be more on what the messaging is, okay, for the candidates vis-a-vis the people's needs, practical and aspirations. If I've not had food in 3 days, right, and I'm starving, and you came and told me to give you mandate so that you can buy me, say, a Mercedes-Benz, much as it sounds appeasing, it's not what I need at that material time, right? And I think that is where we have to deepen the conversation of what Nancy mentioned. The concept of national unity has to be built on the philosophy of national consciousness, right? And this can only happen in 2 or 3 ways. Firstly, the classism that we are witnessing in our country is not an accident, okay? This is a product of, one, having switched to a neoliberal capitalist economy, okay? By default, social classes had to be formulated, because if you look at the book that was written more than 100 years ago by the Communist Manifesto. I don't know if anybody here has read that book, but I would recommend all youth in Uganda and in Africa to read the book, The Communist Manifesto. And Karl Marx talks about social classism, right? And he talks about the haves, like she was mentioning, controlling the factors of production, the have-nots working for the ones that control the factors of production, but the have-nots get to a tipping point where they usurp the system and take over what they call the natural, the government factors of production. And when they take over, they redistribute it amongst themselves to create a classless equal society. Well, there are very many counter-arguments against that narrative, but it, I think, speaks a lot to us as a nation that is still young, right?
Yes.
But most importantly, also talking about us, the young people, and the aspirations that we need right now. If you look at the 3 or 4 most basic aspirations of the young people in Uganda, regardless of where they come from, number 1 is jobs. Not just jobs, but dignified jobs. Young people to have work where they can actually go back home and have something for their family. They can save, and they can also have sufficient funds to develop themselves and their communities. Apparently, the young people that have jobs now, they have mostly undignified jobs. And the jobs that they have, there is no guarantee that they'll have that job tomorrow, because most of the jobs are not on contract. So if you do not appease the interests of the boss, chances are high you'll be unemployed tomorrow. So when we talk about the youth employment things, it's not just about youth getting work. There are procedures about the training, mentorship, getting the work itself, having social protection with that work there is, having safety nets with the work that the person is having, but also contributing to the national economy through joining the money economy. So My 2 cents on the forthgoing electioneering process is, one, there are some things that we need to harmonize on as a country. One, there has to be peace. Let it be a leveled playing field for all players, right? I don't see why one candidate should get VIP treatment and another is heralded like they don't care. That's not a good indicator of an evolving democracy. Number 2, let the messaging of the people that have stood to take over leadership call for national unity, call for young people to engage in the minor economy, call for young people to defend and protect themselves from HIV and AIDS, young people especially to be the champions of climate change mitigation and adaptation, and also having women at the forefront of national service, among other things. So with that, I beg to submit, but I think where we are headed to is a point that needs a lot of reflection from all social strata so that we can come out with the antidote to ensure that the democracy that we have, regardless of who is at the helm of power, even without them, Uganda as a nation still moves forward.
Interesting. Miracle. Talking about youth participation in politics, and particularly youth within the special interest groups, but also youth within the other constituencies. Fortunately, we have had quite a good, not very good, but we've had a number of young people who have taken on flags within their different constituencies. And again, the question of commercialization of politics, again, the question of you're not married if you're running for a certain position, but also the hope that we have as many young people who want to show interest and maybe on other political parties. To context the environment and atmosphere that they are in, what are the recommendations that you'd give in terms of making it, again, peaceful, fair, but also the role that young people themselves have to play in this?
Thank you, Tresleen, for that question. Going to the advice, or what I would say about what is happening for the young people in the different electoral processes, it goes back to we are running a partisan politics. And when you look at certain parties, let's say the NRM, we've not had very, very much inclusivity for the young people in terms of positions of maybe members of parliament. We've had representation in the special interest groups, maybe in youth league, youth council, but when you talk about parliamentary seats, we've not had that representation, that fair representation for the young people. And again, going back to the commercialization, maybe soliciting party support is very, very expensive, and it leaves the young people aside. It leaves them at a disadvantage. I am really, really less than between 25 to 30. Where am I going to get all that money to convince these big people? It goes back to that. But also, we go to the other parties. They are internal democracies. Are they really inclusive? Are they really inclusive? Some of them are really not inclusive. We've had young people being disgruntling about some processes. Again, going back to that the parties should also try to harmonize, try to organize themselves to not only represent, to not only be inclusive, but also to organize their democratic processes. And when we go to commercialization, that is a serious problem for the young people. That is a very, very, not only for the young people, for everyone in this country, actually. What should be done? What should be done is that we need to push for the same agenda. We need to push for the same agenda on behalf of the young people. We are here on this platform talking about commercialization of politics, talking to the policymakers, talking to the party headers and parties all over. That should we have, can we have a very, very fair electoral process, a very, less commercialized. I don't know how to bring it out, but it is really, really key because it is putting very, very many young people at a disadvantage.
Miracle, maybe to get in there, when you talk about us having one voice, And as young people being part of solutions, when you say young people need to make sure they try to avoid commercialization, but when someone contests, it is those same young people that will almost tear you apart. If you don't have money, they will tell you, why did you even come to contest? If politics is not for the poor, or you're telling Chigati, so you don't have votes. And it has been witnessed actually even in the elections yesterday, that the politics of whether it's money versus manifesto. Yes.
Thank you for that. That goes back to us, the young people. Our mindsets. Are we willing? It should start with us, really. It should start with us. If we really want change, we should be champions of change. If we really want better representation, it really should start with us. Such commercialization brings up things like quality. What quality of leaders are we trying to groom? What quality of leaders are we trying to send there? When you look at, and that puts me, many times when I see young people prioritize money, and then at the end of the day, they want accountability. You prioritized money in the first place. You did not prioritize for the needs that you wanted. You did not prioritize for the quality of leadership that you actually wanted. You did not choose that leadership. So it goes back to us ourselves. Can we have a transformation in us? Can we try to push for the leadership that we want? Yeah? Can we try to push for the leadership that we actually wish for? What kind of leaders are we going to groom? Are we going to turn into if we are going to make everything about money? That calls for really transformation, mindset change, but also you talked about what the young people can do in the meantime. What can the young people do to make sure that they are really better off in this process? I will talk about mentorship. I will talk about really getting knowledge about leadership, quality leadership, being able to look up to people that can mentor them, that can inspire them. There are very, very many. That's how transformation starts. It is you, our Miracle, it is you, our Tracy, it is you, our Nancy, it is you, our Mugisha, who says that, yes, I want change. I am seeing this person doing A, B, C, and D. Can I model that? Can I really be the voice of change? I mean, change starts with you yourself. So it goes back to the young people in even this electoral process. Can we choose to stand for what we want? Can we choose to stand for the leadership that we want to see? Can we choose to stand for those values that we want to see, for the change that we want to see?
Interesting. Thank you so much, Miracle, for that. Our time is fast spent, but I'm going to get to you, Nancy, and if you can keep it less than 3 minutes. Civil society's contribution ahead of elections, but also us being each other's keeper in terms of making sure that we have violence-free elections. Your comment on that and then parting shots.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy. My comment is that civil society has been doing their work since the roadmap was out. Even before the roadmap was out, they do post-election analysis. Then they immediately, almost like 2 years ago, they had already started training candidates what you should do in an election, campaign financing, how do you legitimately get money, how do you convince voters even when you don't have money, that type of conversation. But mostly with civic education, they've been top-notch. And in this, I would like to, for example, highlight what the Center for Constitutional Governance does. They have a digital space, Civic Space TV, where anyone, really, any normal human being, any normal Ugandan can appear. The community show from anywhere in Uganda, the youth roundtable, inter-university debates for the young, for the students, but also the women's show, intersecting the different groups and giving them inclusivity in the most blatant way, I would say. So civil society has been doing their job, even with the clampdown on them. The newly brought up NGO law review has been difficult because now we are battling future issues of financing of these organizations, especially with the government trying to put the funds in a basket fund to award to civil societies who deserve those funds. That could be a future challenge that that could actually put an end to all civil societies in this country, especially with youth-led initiatives. It breaks my heart because people are not talking about this more. But also the fact that even with the work that civil society is doing, it's not enough, because the primary role of the Human Rights Commission and the Electoral Commission is to educate voters. It's a constitutional role that is awarded to them by virtue of the offices that those people hold. So for me, I feel like this is a gap, because civil societies are just there to complement the work of these institutions. They're not supposed to take on the load by themselves, but because the government has seemingly stepped back to allow civil societies to do this work, there is nothing that we're going to get out of it. But especially accountability. Even while there is so much advocacy going on, the civic space is continuously shrinking, and that is another concern that we have. But now, just to conclude, I would like to say that the work that civil society does is important, but only as important as the people take it. If the people of Uganda are not actively educating themselves, if the youth of Uganda are not jumping on to have political opinions, and hear me out well, a political opinion is an opinion that you have on issues that influence the factors of life in a society, including things like education, healthcare, and all that. The best way that everyone can benefit from such services. What is not a political opinion is who does not deserve healthcare. That is hate. What is not a political opinion is who is supposed to be killed by a certain type of. It is the most hateful thing, and there is all types of names that we give to these things, sexism, ageism, and all that, because they are not political opinions. So in participating with politics, as feminists, we say that the political is personal. It means that politics affects the basic personal needs of your life. For example, what you eat, where you go, if you make it home alive. So I invite all Ugandans to actually participate in this process, to listen to the manifestos of people despite the danger, but also to protect themselves in this process. Thank you very much for inviting me to the show.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for that interesting conclusion. Emanzi, your parting shots in regards to the topic, but also anything you feel we could have added. And please, if you can keep it less than 3 minutes or even 2.
Okay. God is greatest of all. Because when I look at the nominated candidates, most of them have stories of rags to, not riches, but grace, grass to grace, right? Starting actually from Yoweri Museveni himself. He's a grass to grace lad. His Excellency Bobi Wine is a grass to grace. Munyagwa is a grass to grace, and all these other guys on the list. I'm saying that to remind the youth out there. Right now it might be hard, and nobody said it's going to be easy. But let us push, let us be persistent. Let us build the knowledge base. Let us create the networks that matter. Let us ask the tough questions. And let us go out there, vote, protect the vote, and also defend our democracy by all means necessary, like Malcolm X said. I say that for God and my country.
Thank you so much, Emanzi, for keeping it as brief as you could. It is surprising for today, but I'm very happy with you. Miracle, your parting remarks, especially in terms of what do you think young people need to remind themselves each and every time?
Thank you. What I believe young people should remind themselves is to not fear politics, to really participate, to really come and exercise their rights, to also be very, very cautious about what these people are telling them, what every candidate is fronting. Is it what you want as you are a young person? Is it what you want to see for your country? Are they pushing for policies that favor us? Are they pushing for collaborations? Are they pushing for trade on different platforms that will bring in the jobs that we really need? It is very, very much important. It shouldn't really lie on parties, on anything. It should really be about quality, about what we want to see, about the Uganda that we want to front as the young people, and also to ensure that they really exercise their rights come 2026. Yeah, and I really want to thank everyone for watching this show, and for Creslin for inviting us.
Interesting. Today we've basically been discussing youth participation in politics, and of course giving a highlight at the most recent concluded National Youth Council primary elections, and also giving a snip into the general elections that are happening this week, but also giving a light into the presidential nominations, elections, expectations, campaigns, and all that. And of course, I have been having Miracle Nasazi, who is a deputy speaker at the Makerere University, Emanzi Mugisha, who is a Pan-Africanist, and also Nancy Caroline Ayot, who is a programs assistant at Center for Constitutional Governance, as well as the youth secretary for the People's Progressive Party. I think you should have told us something about the People's Progressive Party. But yes, and of course we've been able to dissect some of the expectations ahead of the general elections, but also to remind young people to be vigilant of whom they support, to be part of solutions in terms of commercialization of politics, but also to call upon other stakeholders involved to ensure that civic education and engagement is not left to rest, but one that must consistently be done, especially even at the grassroots level. And of course, it's been Creslin Ankunda hosting this conversation. Thank you all who have been following us. Do not forget to subscribe and also follow us on our X handle. Thanks to the team that makes this always happen behind on the production. See you next time, same place.
Youth of Purpose.